Welcome to the Stoic Quotient, where truth rises louder than tradition, where courage dismantles control, where we dare to question what many worship blindly. Let's look into how theocracy replaces truth with control. What happens when religion becomes law, when faith is no longer a path to freedom, but a tool for control? In this powerful episode of the Stoic Quotient, we explore the dark underbelly of theocracy, where spirituality is hijacked, obedience replaces inquiry, and fear wears the mask of holiness. This is not an attack on faith, it's a call to rescue it from those who use it to dominate rather than to liberate. From historical theocracies to modern regimes, we expose how sacred language can be used to silence, shame, and suppress. And we look to Stoicism, not as a religion but as a philosophy of personal sovereignty, as the antidote to spiritual enslavement. The problem with theocracy. Theocracy is not faith, it is control adorned in ritual and fear. It masquerades as spiritual order but functions as a straitjacket for the soul. The moment belief becomes law, truth dies and dogma reigns. In theocracy, questioning is heresy, and individuality is erased in the name of collective obedience. There is no space for spiritual struggle, no room for personal revelation, only commands from pulpits weaponized by power. You don't grow under a theocracy, you submit, you shrink, you suffocate under robes stitched with control. When religion marries government, justice is no longer blind, it becomes biased, sharp, and selective. Truth loses its flexibility, frozen into doctrine that cannot be questioned. Freedom is rebranded as rebellion. In this unholy alliance, leaders don't need to reason with the people, they only need to label them sinners, heretics, or enemies of faith. Questioning becomes not an act of wisdom but a punishable offense. Dissent is crucified in the public square, disguised as moral failure. And the sacred, the most intimate and transformative part of human life, is turned into a weapon, wielded to silence, to shame, and to secure control. The consequences: we don't talk about children grow up not learning to connect with God, but learning to fear punishment, as if divine love were a trap waiting to snap shut. Women are silenced, not for peace, but to preserve the fragile egos of power. Sexuality becomes something to hide, not something to understand, wrapped in shame and guilt and buried beneath dogma. And entire generations, wide-eyed, creative, full of potential, are taught not how to think, but how to conform. The cost is invisible at first, until you see the fear in their eyes, the hesitation in their voices, the numbness in their spirit. It is the quiet death of authenticity, repeated in every obedient whisper that dares not become a roar. Theocracy stifles the evolution of consciousness by extinguishing the flame of wonder that drives human progress. It doesn't just silence the mind, it rewires it to obey. Curiosity, which fuels empathy, innovation, and self-awareness, is replaced with rigid compliance. In the name of virtue, it sows guilt like seeds. Guilt for questioning, for desiring, for simply existing outside a mold. It represses the natural rhythms of thought and emotion, creating generational trauma that lingers in bodies, relationships, and societies. And the most dangerous part? It masquerades as morality. It feels like righteousness, even as it strangles the soul's deepest yearnings to be free, to know, to grow. A Stoic perspective: virtue is personal, not imposed. The Stoics believed in personal responsibility, not forced morality. Marcus Aurelius never demanded worship, he questioned himself daily. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." True virtue cannot be commanded, it must be chosen. True morality does not require enforcement, it arises from within. A Stoic doesn't fear questioning, they embrace it. They don't outsource their conscience to priests or politicians. They build their character through reason, reflection, and resilience. History repeats until we interrupt it. From the Spanish Inquisition to modern-day Iran, history is soaked in the blood spilled when faith merges with force. Torture is wrapped in the language of redemption. Eliminations are paraded as acts of spiritual justice, and every silenced voice is claimed to be in the service of purity. When religion becomes law, it doesn't elevate, it eradicates. The human soul is stripped of autonomy, and the divine becomes a tool of oppression rather than liberation. We must name this pattern for what it is, a cycle of moral decay masquerading as righteousness, and unless we confront it, we are doomed to repeat it. When religion becomes government, atrocities find sanctuary. The Stoics warned us: external power corrupts, inner power frees. This is not a call to abandon faith, it is a plea to rescue it from the clutches of fear and domination. True faith is not rooted in obedience but in awe. It flourishes in freedom, not in submission. When fear is removed from the equation, What remains is something sacred and alive, something personal, unchained, and intimate. We must strip belief systems of their authoritarian scaffolding and return to the essence: connection, wonder, and choice. To reclaim the sacred is to say no to control and yes to consciousness. Divinity is not a threat, it's an invitation. One you are free to answer in your own voice. To reclaim the sacred from systems that manipulate. To make space again for soul over script. To remember, divinity doesn't require domination. Faith without fear is liberation. Belief without control is beauty. You were not born to obey, you were born to awaken. At the Stoic Quotient we believe that faith like freedom must be chosen, that truth does not require force, that the sacred does not demand silence. So if you've ever felt crushed by systems that use the divine to dominate, know this: you are not alone. You are not crazy and you are not powerless. We'll continue this conversation in our next episode. Return to stay supported, stay loved, and stay awake. Welcome to the Stoic Quotient. Thanks for being here with us.